After reading the editorials in the papers, I need an introduction to myself. Who is this guy I'm reading about?
So we request the guests for a brief statement, 10 minutes presentation, and then we open the floor for question and answer format next week.
Well, I recently published a book, as you probably know, jointly with Dreze. And there are many things we try to say, but the microphone, okay. Many things sometimes we try to do, but I'd emphasize 4 things. It's not a book on particular thesis only. There are theses, but it's mainly a book about India. And I've always, throughout my life, believed that Dreze shares, that the best way of approaching a problem is to get as much information on the subject as possible. Because whatever we may be blinded by, lack of information is the kind of the worst form of deprivation. So this book has, I don't know, 60 or 100 pages of tables and so on.
You can be today or not?
And
a new story from this year.
is there a question coming in? Yeah, okay. At the table, and these are not tables just to illustrate the point. These are what we know on these subjects. And in fact, if somebody disagrees with me, with us, he should be able to use the same information, the same table, and argue. And this is not unlike many books in India, this is not a book where a particular thesis is just being promoted. That is part of the thing, but the secondary part. The first problem is more of a Bharat Darshan. What is India like now? We are all proud of the country. As an Indian citizen, I have every reason to be proud of being a great nation. And a great nation that has done many things, but what are the problems that it's facing? So the book is partly about that. The second thing is that the picture is one of great success in many ways, some of which are widely known, some of which are underappreciated. When India became independent, this was coming after 200 years of economic stagnation. Adam Smith suggested that India was one of the richest countries in the world and spent some time explaining how India became rich, and he explained it in terms of the trading tradition and the rivers that it helped, compared with Egypt and compared with China and Greece, and pointed out how other countries which didn't have that facility were deprived. And people might wonder how come we were so poor by the time the empire ended. The fact, unfortunately, is that in that entire period of industrial revolution, when the rest of the world was growing, India was stagnating. And if you do a little accounting, it will come out in 200 years of stagnation, can put you really back. So, but even when what is called the Hindu rate of growth, it wasn't such a rate of growth to be ashamed of either, because we were doing nothing. And then during the first period, we had 3.5% rate of growth, which was a gigantic jump from 0.1% of the preceding to the independence. But then that wasn't adequate. But then by the 80s, it went up to 5%. In the 90s, with the economic reform, there was a further basis of expansion, averaging 6% over the 90s and 7% over the first decade. Now it's come down a bit. Even after coming down, after having fallen just as much relatively as Chinese growth rate has fallen, we still remain the third highest, largest economy growing, compared with Brazil and South Africa, which has had a much bigger decline. I think, but not for a long run. Right now they have. Now, so there is things to celebrate in the growth picture. There are things to celebrate which people don't talk about. India we were all told some years ago, everyone is showing us, including WHO, that India is going to be the center of the AIDS epidemic. Hasn't happened. Because public policy. We engage in that. So when we deal with the public policy, we can deal with it. Just as famines used to occur. The 43 was the last famine which I saw as a child. In fact, studied and wrote something about it. But not since independence. So I think there are many, many other things. We have become the largest seller of generic drugs in the world, making it cheaper across the people, poor people all across the world. Great achievement. But in that picture of achievement, there's also great failures, or at least great restrained achievement. Our per capita income may have grown faster, and we may be, quality has been reduced, girls' education has dramatically expanded. So there are problems. And then if you compare with the truly big performer of today, China, then we have really fallen way behind.